Hello, welcome to Post-Colonial Space. I'm Masood Raja, and today in my daily video log series, I'll be talking about power and resistance. It doesn't matter what kind of power and what kind of resistance, but to mobilize any kind of resistance against power, we have to first understand the structure of power itself. So if you look at the pure Marxian view of power, it is architectural, right? There is a top and there is an infrastructure, right? A base. And when you think of power in those hierarchical terms, then the resistance is mobilized in that sense too. Resistance has to be hierarchical and it has to be monolithic. And part of the reason the resistance is imagined in that way is because our idea of power is architectural. But if you think of power post Michel Foucault, right, and just barely thinking about it would tell you that for Foucault, power is diffuse, right? It moves through the body politic. There is no central locus to it. It's everywhere, right? It produces its own resistances as well. So it's both productive as well as destructive. So if you think of power in that sense, then the hierarchical model of resistance doesn't work. You cannot mobilize a monolithic resistance to power that is diffuse, right? So that means that the resistance have to be diffuse as well, right? And that we learn especially from Gilles Deleuze's work, right? The idea of rhizomatic resistance. So by rhizome, he means that at every given place, there is one rhizome here, one over there, and they are interconnected, right? So thinking of power as diffuse, just like the blood vessels that move in our body, it's everywhere. And wherever it moves, wherever there is movement, there can be resistance, right? And if we think in terms of rhizomes of resistance, sorry, that's my cat who just jumped into my lap. So if we think of rhizomes, that means resistance can have different locales, different centers, right? And then they can be interconnected through solidarities, through lateral networks. So if I'm resisting power here, instead of doing it in isolation or instead of trying to develop like a huge resistance structure, I am in touch with people over here. They are in touch with people over there. Hence, we are interconnected in our resistance to the dictates of power, but we also understand that power is diffuse and it works from different places. So how does it work from different places? Let's imagine that. Let's say you have a government, right? But government is not that initiates all the actions. It makes laws. It gives people privileges. It gives people, places in the hierarchy of power, right? And then those places, people use that legal framework, use that power to do what they do, right? So there is no way that we can just focus our resistant attention at one place and get rid of everything. No, we have to fight power wherever it exists, right? And sometimes even the governments themselves are powerless because their actions are determined by large constituencies that give them the power. Right? So rhizomatic resistance then says, okay, here is a group of people, there is a group of people, they are fighting for environmental rights, these are fighting for class rights, they are fighting for caste rights, they are fighting for women's rights, right? All of these groups are fighting against how power dictates their lives. And then they work in solidarity, they get in touch with each other and help each other's cause and come together, even though their fights are at different locations and they are motivated by different, ways of looking at the world or different things that they want to change. Now, the ideal situation for that then is the internet, which itself is diffused, right? And it's everywhere, right? The greatest example of using the internet as a lateral solidarity building tool was by the Zapatista movement, right, in Mexico, because they were fighting in the jungle against the power of the corporations and the central government, right? But they would issue a communique which someone would, ride a donkey and come to San Cristobal, and then they'll put it on the internet. So here was resistance at one place, and then sharing their work, their communiques with the entire world through the internet, right? And so that's what kept them viable. That's what kept them speaking for their rights. So these are some of my thoughts to sum up. If you're thinking of resisting power, changing your own way of life, of course, you can't do it alone. You have to do it in solidarity with others. But you have to think of power differently. Instead of thinking that it has one locus, which if consistently challenged, we'll be able to change it. Imagine it as a power being everywhere. And if it is everywhere, then the mode of resistance must be persistent, must also be diffuse, and must also be at every place where power moves through, where power has an impact. So some further reading, I would highly recommend Foucault's History of Sexuality, Volume 1. That's where he really explains power. Then, of course, Deleuze's Anti-Oedipus, but also 1,000 Plateaus, because those two books are kind of textbooks about resistance to this diffuse model of power, right? And those are hard books to get through, but even if you get like 20% of what Deleuze and Guattari are saying, you will still be better off in imagining power in both material and semiotic resistance to it. That's it for today. I hope this is useful to you. Let me know what you think, and definitely please share your ideas, share your thoughts. And I always learn from your comments and I try to build on them. So do not hesitate to post a question or just what you think about today's video log. Please also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so. And if you find the content useful, please pass it on to others. You are also free to join the channel as a member. Just click the join button below this video and see what comes up. I'll be delighted to have you as a supporter of the channel. And other than that, I hope you're taking care of each other. I hope you're staying safe. Please continue to do so, continue to help each other, and I will now see you next time in another video. Until then, as always, peace and love.